Welcome to the Lift Your Story podcast with guest Sandy Rodriguez, bilingual communication expert and author.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lorianne. I am that gal from Milton, Ontario, Canada, and I am with...
I am that guy. I am Roy Miller from Dallas, Texas. Welcome to our Lift Your Story podcast.
In this episode, we have Sandy Rodriguez with us. She is a bilingual communication expert, and she's also the author of motivational books. Thank you so much for being here today.
You are very welcome. It's quite an honor to be here and very exciting to be here with people from very much all over North America. So you're in Texas, you're in Canada, I myself and I'm in Los Angeles. So it's wonderful to meet today here.
And you as well. So tell us a little about your book, Choose to Prevail.
Absolutely. Well, this is a book that I wish will leave the reader with two different takeaways. One is that they have much more agency and control over whatever happens in their life, that they can feel a greater sense of peace. And secondly, that they can and easily may build more self-confidence if they so desire.
What led you to in your journey to decide to write a book?
Well, let me tell you, I used to be a newspaper editor for the longest of times. I did that for about 15 years in Mexico City. This was for a newspaper that is one of the most influential publications in Latin America. And I was very passionate about that, Roy. But after 15 years or so, and having lived through a number of very trying personal challenges, including the deaths of my father and my brother, and several other issues that were very painful to me, I felt the need to make a huge change in my life and find a career path that would allow me to have a little bit more time to spend with the people I love, because as you can imagine, and if you have worked in media, you can certainly relate. Keeping up with the news cycle is an all-consuming situation. There really is no downtime ever at any time. Not only would you be working literally maybe 14, 15, 16-hour days, but there really is no downtime. Every single moment that you're off the clock, you still need to be aware of what is going on. And let's say that it's your lunch hour and there's an earthquake or someone dies or something happens, any kind of breaking news, well, then it's back to the newsroom for an additional few hours. So, I mean, I was very passionate about this, Roy, but I did feel the need to eventually move into something a little bit different. So basically, I decided to move to LA and start an entirely new career from scratch, which was actually a very bold, but maybe not very wise idea, in the sense that I was already very established in my career, and moving somewhere else would mean pretty much starting out from, square one. So I was able to do that. And then I thought, well, I'm not really a magical person or anything like that. There are very specific things that one can do that can help build one's confidence and allow one to fulfill whatever it is that they want to fulfill. So that was kind of the starting point for me to write this book, thinking, what can I offer people that will enable them to see that a huge life shift is possible pretty much at any point in time. So that was kind of the starting point. But then I started thinking, okay, beyond that, beyond the fact that sometimes people feel stuck in a situation and they want to effect some kind of change, there are many, many different things that might cause the people that I know, different people that I have met, that different people are struggling with different things that might cause them grief. So I decided to write a book that would touch upon many different things that cause people distress and anguish, be it something big like the loss of a loved one, or something perhaps more minor like fear of public speaking, or a freeway phobia, or insecurity about their physical appearance and such. And I put together this book in order to help the reader prevail over whatever it is that is causing them grief. The title of the book is Choose to Prevail, and that is the intention, allowing the reader to prevail over whatever is causing them any kind of stress.
Well, you said you moved from Mexico here,
Yes.
basically starting completely all over from nothing, right? Now, did you have family here?
No, I do not. I have lived in many places throughout my life, Roy. I was born in Puerto Rico because my parents were studying there at the time. It was just a coincidence, a random coincidence, but I was born there. I grew up in Philadelphia, and I lived in Mexico City for pretty much all of my adult life up until these more recent years. I do not have a family. I only had a handful of friends here in LA. I had been traveling here relatively often because at the time, as I was mentioning, I was a newspaper editor, and that included also editing a weekly celebrity magazine. So I would be here often for press junkets or for movie premieres and such. But the reality is that that barely prepares you for an actual life somewhere, because there's certainly a huge, let's say, difference between being put up at a five-star hotel and enjoying a red carpet experience and actually being here and finding yourself with, well, the realities of life, which are certainly not like that. So it was quite a different situation.
Well, I know being bilingual is a huge advantage in these times. Uh, I have a daughter-in-law that's from Honduras that that lives here now. She was fortunate enough when she was growing up, she went to an American school. So she learned English and Spanish. She's fluent in reading and writing in both. And she's a teacher, and she's in huge demand here.
That is fantastic. That is something that many people are coming to realize. I believe that maybe a couple of generations ago, here in the States, encouraging people to be bilingual, trilingual, and such was not only rare, but I would venture to say that in some cases it might even have been frowned upon. But I'm talking about many years ago. I think in modern society, it's like you're saying, a tremendous asset, not to mention perhaps in many cases, even a work requirement, regardless of your field. I myself was able to really effect a huge career shift thanks to the fact that I speak more than one language. In fact, when I moved here, my original idea was to continue working chiefly in media. But as it turned out, this was at a particular point in time, Lorianne and Roy, that a lot of people started creating wonderful content for free. That was during the time that bloggers came to be a very, very popular and widespread thing or phenomenon. And well, while that was fantastic as a content consumer, it was kind of like, oh my, as you know, as a content creator in search of a job. So I was invited to take part in a number of very interesting projects, but I did need to search for gainful employment. Now, being that I was already familiar with publishing, at least temporarily, I was hired by major publishing houses to translate books, best-selling books from English to Spanish. And I did that many times. I maybe translated around 30 books, all of them bestsellers. And there's a reason for that. No publishing company will commission a translation for any book except for a proven bestseller that they know for a fact will be very successful in a different language market. So that was quite interesting. I had not, let's say I had done a few translations professionally in the past, but I wouldn't say that that was ever the bulk of my work. And I thought it was both fascinating and horrifying because, I mean, as a writer, of course, I was enjoying, getting deep into the bones of best-selling books. But on the other hand, translation, particularly of books, is tremendously grueling, on your body, not so much on your mind, but I mean, it's everything. You can get everything from carpal tunnel to spine misalignment. No, it's awful. I mean, in that regard, but it's very intellectually interesting. So eventually, I think that that was a segue into the career path that I eventually discovered, which is what I do now. And it hadn't even been on my radar. I'm currently a court interpreter, which is fascinating. It doesn't have that horrible carpal tunnel spine alignment issue because it's all verbal, of course. And it's truly fascinating because I think it's probably one of the very few activities, not only careers, but just activities overall, that you actually do in the present moment, in the now, and then you're done. I mean, I'm thinking that maybe if I were, I don't know, a sports announcer or something of that nature, I might experience that. But overall, I think that no matter what you do it now in order to see results in the future, be it short, long, or medium term. But normally, whatever you're doing at this point in time will you will be able to reap the rewards in the future. And with interpreting, there's no such thing. You do things in the moment simultaneously, and that is it. So it's quite interesting, really.
So just to clarify for our listeners, a court interpreter is not the same thing as a court reporter. Is that correct?
You are absolutely right. And that is a common misconception. It's two entirely different things. The court reporter is the man or the woman or the person that's at a little typewriter. Now it's more, let's say, more modern than a standard typewriter, certainly. It's very digital now, but it's basically a typewriter where the person is writing down, typing everything that is being said in the courtroom in real time. I can imagine that that is also probably very hard on the body, I'm sure. But it's quite a specialty. I'm very clear on that. I mean, it's not only people that can type extremely fast, but it's also people that can, listen in such a focused way that there is not a word that eludes them. And this is very important because they are the people responsible for creating transcripts. Let's say that there's, I don't know, a murder trial and there's some kind of an appeal or something that requires people to know exactly what was said. I mean, that is the record. These wonderful professionals are in charge of keeping a record of all that is being said. Now, a court interpreter, which would be what I do, is something quite different. We're people that speak one or more languages beyond English. And we are within the courtroom and we are there to interpret or, let's say, verbally translate everything that is being said for the benefit of whoever is there as part of the case that does not speak English. That could be pretty much anyone. It could be somebody that's accused of a crime. It could be somebody that's suing a company. It could be somebody that is being sued. It could be somebody on a family law case, restraining order case, unlawful detainer case. All kinds of different cases and all kinds of different parties on a case could be non-English speaking. And it's actually, at least here in California, it's actually a right that is protected fully, that if you do not speak English, you will be provided an interpreter that will enable you to know what is going on. Now, it's also, well, certainly it's a difficult job that requires not only full fluency in more than one language, but it also requires tremendous concentration because most of the time you're doing this simultaneously. So as you're listening to whatever is being said, you're also repeating the thing in a different language. Some people have compared it to air traffic controlling in the sense that you're doing many things at the same time. I don't know if I would go that far, but it is challenging for many. In fact, the barrier to entry here in California is on the high side. There is a certification test that I believe has a pass rate of 3% or so. But if somebody is to pass this test, I would strongly recommend exploring a career in this field because it's really very interesting. I'm an in-house full-time interpreter here in LA. I know that different states have different, situations for interpreters, but in many different states, many languages are in very high demand. So definitely, if somebody among your listeners is fluent in more than one language, this is definitely something to explore. It's a very, very fascinating field.
So if someone's in the witness stand and say they only speak Spanish.
Yes.
Okay, so the prosecutor, whoever asked them a question in English, you're there, you hear that question, you tell them in Spanish, he wants to know this. They answer, they tell you in Spanish, then you tell the prosecutor in English, she says this.
Exactly. And to make it even more specific, we wouldn't even say he says this, she says this, but we would actually take on the persona of the speaker. For example, if you, Roy, say, good morning, my name is Roy, I would say, good morning, my name is Roy. It's Spanish. So we actually we repeat exactly what is being said, exactly as it is being said. It's very important to be as precise as possible, even in things as minor as, let's say, the register, which would be the degree of, let's say, elegance, or let's say that might be involved in a sentence. For example, if somebody says, I was put in the slammer, I couldn't say something in Spanish like, I was imprisoned. No, so I would have to say something that feels as casual as what was actually being said. So it's pretty interesting. It's a very fascinating field, and you get to hear the most interesting of stories. Certainly, they're not to be repeated, but they are, as you imagine, fascinating.
So I was curious about this, and that is true though, because we have our different sayings in different languages. I
Yes.
speak French, and we kind of laugh when I try to say something in English and French. It doesn't translate very well. It's a joke
Oh,
even.
absolutely. Well, living in
Uh,
Canada, I'm sure that you encounter that very frequently, being that Canada is a country where definitely more than one language is spoken. That's exactly right. Let
yeah.
me give you an example. In Spanish, for instance, in English, you would say the, let's say, let's see, I'm trying to think of a saying that might be quite different. Huh. Let's see. It'll come up. Can you give me an example in French of sayings that simply do not translate well?
Oh, now you're going to ask to put me on the spot.
Let me think. Let's see.
There's a few of them, and I mean,
Mhm.
even in I'm sorry, but if there was a swear word to be said
Uh-huh,
in French, the funny thing is in English it's not a swear word, but
uh-huh.
yet it's being said as a swear word. So how do you translate that? So let's say, a lot of the French swear words are church
Oh, I see.
places, right? So
Yes,
if you
yes.
say the bread of Christ, it's swearing in French, or tabernacle is swearing in French,
Ah,
but it's not in English.
really? Oh, wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
and yet funny thing is to say, oh my God in French is not like mon Dieu is not swearing,
Uh,
in English, oh God is. So
Correct. Mhm.
there are all those really interesting. So if this person's actually swearing, you're really saying something. It almost sounds funny to say it in English. He just says, oh, tabernacle, and yet in French it's bad, in English it's not. So those are
Very,
funny little quirks. Yeah. So as a
very much
translator,
so.
I wouldn't even know how to say that. It's, do you even say swearing, quote unquote, tabernacle? Like,
Well, it's quite interesting. Here, what you would have to do is understand the meaning, understand what the person is trying to say. Is the person trying to curse someone out? Is the person just expressing surprise? And you would have to say a word or an expression in the other language that is equivalent, not so much in meaning, in literal meaning, but more so in intention.
okay.
So it's quite difficult. But I already I thought of a saying now. Okay, you know how in English you would say something like the early bird catches the worm. That you would never say that in Spanish. That would be as bizarre as can be. People would say what? However, in Spanish you would say something that means the one who wakes up early is helped by God, which sounds very I don't know, very, very odd in English. Not that it's probably not a very optimistic sentiment, but it's just not the way that you would say it. So that's the thing. You would also have to be very familiar with a number of sayings so that you can easily think of how it could be expressed. And most sayings do have an equivalent. In case they don't, and some do not, you would have to just pretty much explain the meaning in a different way. So it's interesting. Yeah.
The other thing I was wondering about is when there is, and I should know this, I have a sister who's a court reporter. She's been for 20 years. So I know what carpal tunnel is for her. And I've tried to help her with not court stuff, but other typing stuff that she does. She sees 200 words per minute. Let me tell you, my arms hurt after a while. like the wrists really do take a beating when you're constantly doing that, because she does book transcripts too. And I'm going, whoa, well, that's,
There you go.
But interested in wondering, when there is an interpreter, do they have court reporters? And I never asked her this, so I'm going to ask you. Do they have court reporters on both, like for your interpretation and for the English? And do they have one who does let's say the Spanish, or would there be somebody to do the French, so that there's both languages reported?
Well, let me tell you, I'm not sure how it would work in other countries. Maybe there's a difference, but here the only record that counts is whatever is said in English, which is why it's so important for us to be accurate. Because let's say that the person says something, and let's say that the person says not guilty, and I say guilty. Okay, the only thing that will be on the transcript is me claiming that the person said that they were guilty. So imagine the degree of responsibility, seeing that the only record that will be kept is the English record. I do have, let's say, a full commitment to making sure to understand what the person is saying. And in fact, because precision is so important, I would say that overall judges and pretty much everyone is very receptive if either a reporter or an interpreter says, I need a repetition. I mean, especially when you need to, let's say, report, in other words, take a transcript or interpret something that is as major as somebody pleading guilty or not guilty. I mean, definitely, if you cannot hear something properly, like somebody's name, or you're unsure about what was said, surely you cannot be doing that like every 5 minutes, like saying, I want a repetition, I want a repetition. That would surely not be ideal. But if there's any doubt in your mind, you would need that. Now, let me tell you that it's also very interesting, even though only a record of what is being said in English is being kept, there was this very strange thing going on back when we still had jury trials. And I said back when we had jury trials because for the time being they're suspended, although they're about to come back in weeks. I mean, it's something that is sure to happen in a very short amount of time. Right now we have no jury trials, but normally when jury trials take place, what happens is that the jury is told not to pay attention to what is being said in another language, even if they speak that language, but rather to focus on what is being rendered by the interpreter, because that's what counts. That is what is going to be on the record. That is what is going to be in the transcript. So, I mean, although they are instructed, certainly if they notice a huge mistake or something, I mean, certainly they could advise the judge if something extremely strange were to happen. But the reality is that what you need to focus on as a juror, or as an attorney, or as anybody in the courtroom, even if you're fully fluent in many languages, is the English rendering. So that's interesting. However, even though that happened, normally judges would also instruct the foreign language speaker to speak loudly and into a microphone. And I would always think, well, what's the use? Why would they, instruct them to do something that to me seems, not particularly useful? Well, here's the thing. The belief of many judges is that, just noticing people's demeanor, hearing how confidently or underconfidently they're speaking, hearing the tone of their voice might give you some insight into more of their personality or more of whatever it is that you need to make assessments or decisions. So it's interesting. I don't know how much it actually works, but I mean, surely there's a reason for that. The only reason I think that it might not be as useful as one would expect is that some languages, at least to our Western ears, sound very sweet. And some languages sound very jarring or very strong or very aggressive, even though they're not meant to be. So maybe in some languages, you might be saying something very normal and it might sound like menacing, or the other way around. You might be saying, oh, I killed this man and then I killed this other man in a very sweet voice, you know? So I don't know, it's a difficult situation.
That would be really tough because, again, being bilingual, and I don't know if you've ever done this, but you're watching a movie. So I'll be watching a French movie, but it's got English subtitles at the bottom. And I'm trying to avoid the English subtitles at the bottom to try and, practice my French listening.
Yeah.
And it's hard. So I'm sure that for the jury who understands the language but they have to focus on the English, it would be equally, because it's distracting. So that would be really tough. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that it's very easy to ignore a second voice or a second language if you don't understand it. But if you do understand it, it's like, oh, what? Yeah, it's confusing. It is confusing. I can certainly see.
Sandy, how can our listeners reach out to you?
Well, it's very easy, Roy. All they need to do is go to Instagram and select at Choose to Prevail. Choose to Prevail is the title of my book, which I have here if anybody's watching on YouTube. Choose to Prevail by Sandy Rodriguez can be found pretty much anywhere books are sold, including Amazon. But even if you don't want the book and you just want to have a conversation, I'd be more than happy to connect on Instagram at Choose to Prevail.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for today. That was very interesting.
Yes.
It
Really
was lovely to meet the both of you. That's wonderful. So nice that we found points in common, being that your daughter is bilingual, you yourself are bilingual, and you both seem to be very familiar with court reporting, with the degree of physical, wear and tear that comes from, doing that kind of a job. Fantastic. This was great. I'm so glad that I got the chance to meet you, and it was quite an honor to be on your podcast.
Well, thank you very much. We're happy to have you.
Absolutely. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit us at lifterstory.com.